Trojan Warriors, good morning. This is Dre Griggs here, always thankful for our time together. We're going to go ahead and continue in just the series that we've done each day for the month of February, for Black History Month. We're going to explore a famous, or maybe not so famous, but we'll at least say successful Black in the way that they were able to build their wealth. And we're going to look for patterns, commonalities, and see if there's things that we can kind of glean from this information. Today we're going to talk about Dr. Philip Emeagwali, and that name is actually a Nigerian name. So I did practice it, even though my wife's Nigerian. So I had her give me some insight as well to make sure that I was enunciating it correctly. But Dr. Emeagwali, what he was is actually the oldest of 9 children. Yes, you heard me, 9 children. So growing up, he actually had the name Calculus. He was seen as a math whiz, a prodigy, just someone who was able to really comprehend numbers in a way that is just unpatterned, just unparalleled. And he did not actually have a high school diploma when he was growing up. And the reason was there was actually a Nigerian civil war that had started around the time that he was a kid. So he actually was drafted into the war. So he was not able to go. His parents were put into refugee camps and they stayed there. Now, in case you're wondering, the refugee camps, about 500 or so, about 500,000 people had died of starvation in these refugee camps. So it was a very difficult time for everyone involved. So when the Civil War ended, Dr. Emeagwali, he actually was able to get what was equivalent to a high school diploma. And even though there was a point in time where he was trying to go to school to get the regular degree, he had to walk 2 hours and then they had to pay a tuition. So the money just wasn't working and the distance, but he was committed to it, right? Like that was when he was chasing happiness, what he was looking for. And you find common is going on is people are aligned where their skills are aligned with their soul and that inner drumbeat, where it's all in sync, that there are things that each of us have that allows us to do things that other people just dream about doing. That is very difficult for them to do, and it's something that we can almost just like we were born to do, for lack of a better phrase. And Dr. Emeagwali, he was born for math. And so it was always apparent to everyone around him that this guy really understood the numbers in a way that most people couldn't even explain if he was right or wrong, let alone the fact that a kid without a lot of education is just able to really grasp this information. So the reason that he's known, at least for us, is he's considered by many at least one of the fathers of the internet. And we'll get to that in a little bit, but he was able to get a scholarship that allowed him to come over to America, where he was able to go to college. So he was able to get his bachelor's at the University of Oregon. And then he was able to get his master's, and he ultimately was able to get a doctorate from the University of Michigan. And he changed his degree, we'll say, like his master's, for example, was in like ocean and marine life engineering, and then he ended up getting another master's in applied mathematics. But the interesting thing, as far as just someone who was born oldest of 9 in Nigeria, off in the Civil War, came back, couldn't afford to get his degree. Did you know the first time that he saw a computer was when he came over on his scholarship? And the first time he saw a computer and a telephone and a library were all in 1974. So to go from someone that has never even seen or experienced a computer to being able to instantly understand some of the intricacies of a computer is really fascinating. And it's often, as I tell you guys, you have to twofold. One is you have to follow the inner drumbeat of your heart. When you're chasing happiness and you're going to catch greatness along the way, if you are aligned with the essence of your being, if you are listening to the voice inside of you, where you feel this sense of like there's like this just really aligns with something that I want to do, you have to chase that. It's not a question of, well, this isn't going to work. I'm living in a country where we don't have the access for this, right? Like everybody needs to go into a certain industry if they want to survive here. But Dr. Emeagwali, that was not a part of his calculus, right? He just focused on what he enjoyed doing and what he was really good at. And then the scholarship opportunity opened up, and you see that things start to move towards you when you start taking steps towards it. And so now, in 1974, he's finally introduced to computers and a lot of different technology. And then Dr. Emeagwali, he's like, okay, I'm starting to understand some of this stuff. So while he's working in his doctorate at the University of Michigan, he is now working with supercomputers. And if you may remember, you may not, back in the day, a supercomputer was almost like the just like a wall of wires and hard drives and software where I mean they're huge, and when you're looking like historically at some of them, and then even though they've progressively gotten smaller, they were still very large and bulky. And Dr. Emeagwali, he had this idea that, you know what, I think it may make more sense for me to use a bunch of small computers, a bunch of regular sized computers, and I can get them to work together. And if I get them to work together, then I can probably outperform this big, bulky supercomputer. And so we started working on that. When asked, well, where did that idea come from? He said, well, I remember watching the way that like a beehive worked. And by that, he's like, I could just see the bees and how they seem to be very efficient and effective in their communication to each other. And the work that a group of bees in a beehive can do together is greater and far above anything that any one individual bee can do. So he said, as I pondered on that, the way that they were communicating with each other, I then had the idea that if I could string together thousands of processors in different areas, then I can use all of these different computers to compute the work that I need to get done. And I thought that was very interesting because twofold. One is I often find that a lot of the most amazing and interesting inventions that you hear about, they're usually tied to the perfection of design. And what I mean by that is there is a symmetry in nature. It's just very beautiful, and you can see a designer's handicraft and their work in this. It's why we look at like submarines, it's why they look like whales. It's why when you look at helicopters, they look like dragonflies. There is a way that, right, and even a plane and a bird, right, we emulate different things within nature because there is a perfection in the design of nature. And so that was just something when I was like, yeah, well, that, that makes sense, right? There is something about the way that bees and they efficiently are moving, and it seems like they're moving a million miles an hour, and they are getting things done. And so he used that thought to get these computers to work together, and he was very successful. He was able to get 65,000 processors to communicate all at the same time to work on solving one problem, and he was able to get, I believe it was like 3.1 billion is the processing speed that he was able to get up to as far as solving different equations. And he used this to solve some of the problems, like just a little background information. The Nigeria Civil War was over a lot of the oil reserves and who controlled the oil, because Nigeria is the #1 oil producer in Africa. And so this ability of putting these processors together, he was then able to create with a team of people where they were able to work together and create this ability for them to be able to tell if there was oil underwater or under the ground, where they were able to start now using computing and computing science to pinpoint exactly where they should drill, which is solving a lot of other problems from societal to humanitarian, whatever. But he was able to use this process, right? This is the speed that he needed information to be calculated. And this information was also used as far as creating the Apple computer, where his processors, they used that idea as far as in their dual process for Apple. It's also part of what created the internet. It's why he's considered one of the founders of the internet, because for computers to talk to each other like that, to create that network and that symmetry, i.e. like a beehive, that was how the internet, if you really think of it in its most basic component, it's how it kind of works. Now, when you ask Dr. Emeagwali, he says, you know what, I never imagined the internet would be what it is today. But understanding that, even the advancements that's made when you're considered a father, is because your piece is one of those vital pieces, one of those first pieces that's necessary. And that's why he was able to receive his own, not the Nobel Prize, but I believe it was the Gordon Bell Prize. And what that is it's the Nobel Prize of computing. So he was able to be recognized by his peers for his contribution and his greatness and his excellence. And again, I would be remiss if I did not bring up the fact that he was able to do this within a short span of, hey, welcome to America, hey, this is what a computer is, to I understand computers so much that I believe that this whole supercomputer thing, that it's inefficient in a lot of ways. And then we can actually use a bunch of small computers and then use their processors together to create something massive and amazing. And it's often when you're, at least when I was younger, I used to wonder why would people try to hack into my computer and take it over and control it, because it's, there's not much value and benefit in it. But then when you understand that they're using the processors, that they're using everyone's computer, that they put spyware and malware on, and then they're using that to do something bigger, then it's like, oh, okay, I can sort of see what you're saying now. And so it's just an absolute amazing thing. But always, as we were trying to figure out this list, is I want you to understand a couple things. One is, again, you find that twofold. One is his parents had a profound influence. It said that his dad had recognized that his son knew a lot about numbers, and that he was able to understand it, and that he was encouraged to grow that skill, to chase that skill. And then also you find that if you take steps towards the goal that you're trying to achieve, as you are chasing happiness, that you cannot allow the fact that you can't see exactly how it's going to work in your current situation to convince you to not take any steps towards it. I'm hoping that you're seeing a pattern where consistently, by taking action and taking steps, these people who have skills that they had when they were younger, and they did not allow society to tell them that that's unreasonable or that's impossible or that won't be successful, but they grew that skill. They were able to find that, even though that this is something that's easy for me, it's still something that is seen as amazing to the average person. And a lot of the times we spend so much time trying to figure out, how do I fit in with everybody, that we're missing the whole boat. I mean, when you really think about what it is that we're trying to accomplish, what is chasing happiness, is the idea that we have a contribution that we know that we can provide to the world, and we simply are dealing with a lot of the headspace that is explaining why it's not possible, why it will be difficult, why it won't be well received. But we have to get past all of that. And as long as you are building momentum, as long as you are taking action, then you will find that it shows your journey, a little bit of action each day, that when you look at the end of a year, 365 or 366 days, you won't recognize your life anymore. And we find that that's often what is happening. These people are just taking action where they're at, and they're allowing the information that they're learning to adjust their scope and their perspective on things. And so that'll be a mindset moment. I'm thankful always for our time together. If you enjoy this information, or if you have someone that you would want to see if I can add them to the list, if I can shuffle people around, go ahead and just reach out to me, write the name in the comment. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, and I'll keep putting them out. I'll keep sharing the information with you, and I want you to be able to get the information ahead of time. Until next time, continue blessings on your journey to become the champion of your dream life. And as always, better self, better wealth.